in full blast, by the way. Um, yeah, it's got a couple things on my mind. So I decided, why not go ahead and make this video, man. First and foremost, um, it's kind of like one thing that I learned is that when people ask you what you do for a living and stuff like that, be very careful about who you discuss your like finances with or discuss like what it is you do for a living or how much you make or what are the benefits and stuff because well, it's kind of you think it's nothing innocent about it, so you don't mind like sharing your information, to a degree. And then you know, sometimes people I feel like they do this on purpose because it's like they'll try to say, "Hey, so what do you do for a living?" You're like, "Oh, this is what I do, blah blah blah." Okay, well, what are like the benefits, retirement plan, blah blah blah. So you don't think nothing of it. And I was in a conversation with like this guy who was a manager, right? He was a manager at a 7-Eleven. And we were cool, At least I thought we were. About 2 weeks ago. And he proceeds to ask me, so yeah, are you taking any vacation time? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be on a 17-day vacation from the 2nd to the 15th. And he's like, what do you plan on doing? I'm like, oh, well, I was going to go to Addison Kaboom Town in Dallas for the fireworks show, on third, because they have like a little event up there where they light fireworks or whatnot. And so, like, the conversation was casual. I didn't think nothing of it. And then he just proceeds out of nowhere to start cussing me out. And I was like, okay, so what the fuck's this guy's problem? I'm filling up my drink and he's like, man, you always come in here talking about your job and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, you're the one that asked me what I do for a living. So, like, you asked me what I do, and then I told you what I did, and then you asked me the benefits that I get, and I told you. Then you asked me about going on vacation, and I answered the question correctly and honestly. Yeah. And then you can proceed to get angry about it. I'm like, I don't get it. And then, so he's cussing me out, right? I didn't say nothing back to him. I'm just like, all right, I'm just letting him cuss me out. So I pay for my drinks and I walk out, and then like another one of his employees said, he's kind of struggling and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. Like I get like the frustration because I know what it's like, to get a really small check or to get underpaid. I've been there. I've worked for many jobs that are like that in the past. So I understand. I'm like, but dude, don't sit there and cuss me out after you don't ask me a question. And I answered the question because you asked it to me. I thought, it was just out of the I thought we were just having a respectful conversation, but people are struggling out there. I understand that. I know what it's like. So and trust me, I'm not even at a place where I'm making a ton of money either. Still to this day, like I still feel like I can do more. One thing is for certain, I learned: do not discuss your finances or anything like pertaining your like job. Um, like in terms of benefits, retirement, anything like that. Don't discuss it to anybody that may get triggered. Because I feel like when they invite you in that conversation, it's not from like a general consensus of hey, congratulations. It's just they're angry about their situation, and I'm like, well, why is this dude's getting mad at me? He's a manager. If he's a manager, you would assume, hey, okay, he's making more money than me, and so like, how are you gonna get mad at me for? But I don't know. I guess this is water under a bridge. All right. This is water under a bridge. The sad thing is, I know people who are millionaires, like personally myself, that are millionaires, and they'll tell me about, their finances. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I don't take offense to it. I have a good friend of mine who's like a multimillionaire. And he's one of the coolest guys ever, and he was telling me, my dad passed away and I got a big inheritance. I'm like, that's cool. I'm like, I don't take no offense to that shit. Like, I'm like, that's what's up, man. Hey, you got money, you're a multimillionaire. And he was like, well, he's like, you're one of the very few people I could discuss my finances to without you getting upset about it. I'm like, because I don't take it personal. What you make is your business. I'm not going to sit there and get angry with you, even if my situation's not where it's supposed to be. I don't take no offense to what another man makes. It ain't none of my damn business, but I appreciate you for sharing. But some people here you can't really discuss your finances with because then they get all upset and, like, I guess, triggered. And I guess that's kind of the world we live in. So if I was to give you guys any advice, do not discuss your finances with anybody. You know, even though I know, kind of like on the internet, a lot of these guys brag about their situations. I noticed that, like, all these video makers is, oh, I make all this money and do this, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, I guess that's sort of the world we live in now, where people can kind of be a little juvenile on the internet. But I just personally would not recommend you guys discussing your finances with people, because they take that shit very, very offensively, or they get triggered. And I'm like, okay, you know. But anyways, it's water under a bridge, I guess. So, did greed ultimately kill this, you know, the society, I guess, or this, you know? There's always a question I've been wondering. Is it greed? I mean, you can kind of look at it several ways. But at the end of the day, the human element's always going to kick in, and people are going to first look after themselves. I mean, you're going to look at the best option on the board that's best for you and your family. And then maybe, like, people around your little circle. And then after that, everybody else kind of eats. I mean, that's sort of how, like, the business sector sort of operates. If you look in politics, it's sort of the same thing, even though a lot of it's corruption based. A lot of the reason why there's no term limits, for example, is because of the fact that they can position themselves kind of like a poker position or like a chess move on the board. They can put themselves in position to keep themselves in power, to where they can write laws and legislations that benefit them or peers around them or people that might have put them in that office seat. So of course they're not going to put a term limit on themselves, because then that's going to actually require that they're only going to be in office for a certain amount of time. But if you're in there for 50 years, you have power. That's sort of your ability to probably obtain a lot more money in the long run, even though a lot of it is possibly breaking the law and possibly corruption. And probably is most likely is corruption, but in a sense, it's greed, right? It's like the same, kind of the same thing, if you think about it. And, you know, it's natural for you to want more. So that in itself is greed, right? It's like it's natural for you to want to better yourself. It's natural for you to want to get a raise, or natural for you to want to learn a skill or something so that you can make more money later. You know, so it's kind of natural to be greedy, but also in the same sense, if you overindulge yourself, can that be bad, right? It's like if you overeat, right? You can have a lot of health problems, right? If you overdrink, you have problems with drinking. If you overgamble, you can, have a gambling addiction, lose a lot of money. If you have oversex, there's like STDs, diseases, and stuff. Even if you drink a lot of water, you can intoxicate. What do they call that? Like water intoxication. There's a lot of, like, I guess, different ways you can sort of look at it. You can sort of look at greed. It's when you overindulge. It's the same thing in business when they send our jobs overseas, right? It's to cut corners. It's to cut costs, essentially. You know. So, like, the natural human element is always going to be to position yourself in life so that you can ascertain as much money as you can. It's just sad reality about the way that business operates, or the way that the world is when it comes to the competition standpoint. In order to have winners, you have to have losers. And it kind of pains me to say that, because the thought of saying loser is like, somebody who never achieves anything in life. But it's not just necessarily just that. But the way that it looks is that in order for somebody to have so much, somebody's going to have so little, next to nothing, because there's no way that you can distribute wealth all around to, like, what, 11 point something billion people in the world, in hindsight. I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes logical sense, or mathematically kind of makes sense. But, from a spiritual, morally, it kind of is bad too, because you have people that are starving, can't eat, and doesn't know when their next meal is. And you have some people that can just eat whenever they want, right? And then you got some people that have no access to water, that have no access to a warm bed, or a warm home, or whatever. And you have some people that have access to many homes. There are some people that have access to unlimited amounts of water. You have some people in this world that have no access to healthcare, right? And then you have people who get the best affordable healthcare around the world, and and they have access to different treatments and stuff. And they have access to different forms of medical care that even the normal person, which is the vast majority of people, the normal people have no access to. I mean, if you think about it, does greed ultimately, like, the word I want to use, does it devour our soul? Does it ultimately make us evil as people? I guess there's different ways that you can sort of break that down. If you look at the way the world is now, with all these wars, there's just disagreements on how people view their way of how things should be run. If you look at how a lot of these businesses are closing up, to where, you want to operate a business, and, competition is good. At least you were always told that growing up. And now it's just like, now all these, like, big companies just kind of they want to just take over everything, and they just want to leave everybody else with nothing. That's sort of how it is now, like, from a competition standpoint. And it's like me, I don't mind, like, helping people out. I've done it many times. I've even done things for people that didn't deserve it, but I just did it because I was a kind person. You know, I've I've given to the homeless before. I've donated clothes. I've done nice things for people before. Numerous things I haven't even mentioned on here. You know, but I also understand that I can't, like, help the world, right? Because I'm not, kind of, like, in a position to do so. I'm not financially in a position to where I could just help every person out. But whenever I have what little money I can, or what little things I can do, I help out some people around me in my circle, and help family out and stuff like that too. So it feels good when you're, I guess, when you're doing your part. You know. But I also understand why you should be well guarded around your money, because you have to be very careful, because there's sharks out there, man. There's people out there, when they realize you have money, it's always like, hey, can you do me this favor? Hey, can you do me this? And it's like, these are, like, most likely 95% of the time, or 99% of the time, people that ask you to do stuff for them, they would never even do it for you. Like, if it was up, like, if they were in the same position, or just in general, in a general sense, they would never do these things for you. But, but then they expect you to kind of do it for them. They expect you to do nice things for them, but then, but they would never return the favor, or never reciprocate, and or never even did it themselves. Not even just for you, but for anybody. Like, they would never even help out anybody. That's the only bad thing, is when you go out of your way to do so many nice things for people, because at the end of the day, like, most of the time, they would never do shit for you. I know they say, well, you shouldn't always expect something back from somebody, and that's absolutely like true in a sense. But at the same time, like most people that ask for help, they would never even do it for you, or just, or they probably never even helped anybody out themselves. They were just so busy wanting people or wanting help from everybody that they just never did it themselves. And it's just, that's sort of like the way that the world kind of works is just when you do have stuff, everybody and their mama has their hand out wanting you to help them, but they never would do it for you. They would never go out of their way to help you out personally. And that's why, I can understand why the wealthy or like the people at the top are kind of guarded with their money, because they know if they just hang around a bunch of people that just are always in constant need of stuff, that they're just end up giving all their money away, you know? So I can sort of look at the term greed in different perspectives, different perspectives on how you view it. If that I guess makes any sense. Um do I think that greed killed this country? Um I would say probably for the most part, yes. For the most part, yes. Because at the end of the day, despite the fact that we have to be well guarded and have to be, but when you have this mindset, I just want to own everything and everybody owns nothing, then it does have its kind of reverse effect. Because in order to have everything, theoretically, a lot of people are probably going to have nothing. And like one thing that I kind of agree with environmentalists on is they say, why should we have to pay for a piece of land that we were born on? And like if you think about it theoretically, it is kind of true. Like if you are, why should you have to pay for a piece of land that you were born on, which does kind of make sense, like when it comes to like basic living and basic, human rights in terms of like food, water, and shelter. You would think that in a sense that, yeah, we should have access to those things without necessarily having to pay for it. But then I don't know if you could be able to have access to getting everybody a piece of property. Yeah, yeah. How many people we got? 11.8 billion. It would be kind of impossible, I'm assuming, to have everybody get access of land. You'd have to give everybody probably like an acre of land to live on. That doesn't sound probably as easy, because then you would have some people not living in the city and then not having access to their work. That could be an issue too, when it comes down to it. I mean, for the most part, I would say ultimately greed has killed this country. It's unfortunate, um, because now it just seems like you just got a small percentage of people that just kind of want to own everything. They just kind of want to take control, and that means you're like, because the middle class is the class ultimately that drives this economy. And if you get rid of the middle class, you're just gonna have what, like the powerful rich, and you're just gonna have like the bottom poor. And that's not gonna drive society. It's just gonna have a small percentage of people just basically like owning everything. And I don't think that is that's a good recipe. It sounds like I take that back. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, if that sort of makes sense. It does, you know? Um, Wiping out the middle class would definitely eliminate a lot of like the job market, the job sector. And plus, even for the people who say, well, they should own a trade or learn something. I'm like, yeah, but a lot of the customers you get are also from the middle class that have those normal jobs too. So it'll affect the people even with trades. It'll affect even the people who are making a ton of money. Like it'll affect you if you eliminate the middle class. It's just not good. So like if you look at like automation, and also you look at AI technology and stuff, it's going to wipe out all these jobs, and you're talking about what, like 70-80% of people out of work. Yeah, that's not good. Like that's ultimately not good. Is you're how those people supposed to make money. And not only that, but how is the economy supposed to stay afloat if you literally got 80% of the job market out of work? I mean, then you would have to give people a digital currency, or what they call a universal income. And it's like, well, is that necessarily going to work? Right. So now you're in a situation like that, and it just adds to that, I guess, sort of like that Pandora's box. It adds to Pandora's box. What if, um, again, what if the middle class is destroyed? You just literally have nothing, right? And it's going to drive this economy down the hill. This is not good. I mean, I don't know people who are rooting for this shit and rooting for like, oh, the automation is great and AI technology is great. And I'm like, yeah, but not at the expense of many people losing their jobs. I mean, you're talking about a global, massive um, scale here of like 80%. I mean, it's going to wipe out most jobs. And the jobs that will be left, they're going to be very limited. I mean, this is not good. So what are you just going to do? You're just going to have a bunch of people starving. Well, that's not good, right? You don't want people to starve. I mean, did greed ultimately kill this country? I would say for the most part, it probably did. I'd say for the most part, yes, absolutely. This country has been affected by greed, or society as a whole, and it's unfortunate, you know, that I mean, like you could see the stories of like kids that are starving and stuff and look like malnourished and shit, and then you see all these people from other countries that are suffering through wars and famine and drought, and it's just like you could just see like these oligarchs and stuff playing golf on TV and just bragging about it like it's nothing, and it's just like what has our society has gotten to, that materialistic things matter more so than helping our fellow man, if that sort of makes sense. And it's sort of like now we're just driving down to like this greed, you know. It's unfortunate, but unless we do a little soul searching as a society, which I don't see that happen anytime soon, but when we do, we're gonna have to do a lot of soul searching about how we carry out the way we live and the way we treat others. And until we fix that, yeah, things are only going to get worse before they get better, and that's absolutely facts.